007 First Light launches May 27. Everyone who's played it early says it looks incredible, but they all played on high-end PCs. Today, what PS5 and PS5 Pro owners actually need to know, what the footage is really showing us, and what I will be testing the moment this game is in my hands. Let's start with the engine, because understanding what's under the hood tells you more than any preview ever will. 007 First Light runs on IO Interactive's Glacier engine, the same tech behind all three Hitman World of Assassination games. Refined across a decade of development, IO knows this engine inside out. But First Light isn't just a Hitman game with a Bond skin. They have made three major upgrades that matter for PS5 Pro owners. First, fully dynamic global illumination. In Hitman, lighting was largely baked, pre-calculated, efficient, and static. In First Light, the global illumination is real-time. Light bounces off surfaces, reacts to environmental changes, updates dynamically. That's a massive computational step up. Every surface in the scene is now participating in the lighting calculation. Second, ray-traced reflection and shadows. On PC, this goes all the way to full path tracing with DLSS 4.5. On PS5 Pro, it will be hybrid ray tracing, which means selective surfaces, selective light interactions. Third, a brand new proprietary volumetric smoke system. IO has publicly claimed this, quote, has not been done anywhere before. Every developer says things like that, so take it with a pinch of salt. But volumetric effects are genuinely expensive. Smoke, fog, atmospheric haze, these are the first things that get scaled back on console hardware. If IO has built something genuinely new here, it will be the first thing I stress test. Watching the early footage, particularly the London exteriors at night, the wet streets, the lighting cutting through the atmosphere, you can see the ambition. The visual jump from Hitman is real. But that footage was all captured on PC. The question is, how much of that jump survives the transition to console hardware? So what's actually confirmed for PS5 Pro? Let me put the full breakdown on screen now. This is straight from Sony's PlayStation website. Their own words: 60 FPS in quality mode, PSSR upscaling to 4K, and advanced ray tracing. They specifically list RT reflections, RT shadows, and high-quality global illumination. Now look at the base PS5 column. It's all to be confirmed. Whether base PS5 has any ray tracing at all, what resolution it targets, what the performance mode looks like. None of that has been confirmed. Nobody can fill those gaps until the game is in our hands. PSSR is where this gets interesting, because how well it works depends entirely on how the developer implements it. PSSR has come a long way. The 1.0 version that launched with PS5 Pro back in November 2024 had real issues: shimmering on hair and foliage, grainy artifacts in certain lighting. Games like Silent Hill 2 Remake and Star Wars Jedi Survivor were genuinely worse on PS5 Pro than base PS5 because of PSSR artifacts. But PSSR 2.0, which dropped in March this year, is a different story. It's built on a fork of AMD's FSR4, optimized for PS5 Pro. Crimson Desert launched with it integrated from the start, and it handles heavy combat and open landscapes without sacrificing clarity. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth saw hair strands that previously blurred now resolved with individual detail. Digital Foundry called PSSR 2.0 code so big it justifies the existence of PS5 Pro. So the question for 007 First Light is, which version is it using? And how cleanly has IO implemented it? Especially on fine details. Bond suit fabric, volumetric smoke, the reflective surfaces in the Gala. That's exactly what I will be analyzing. Now let's look at what we are seeing. Even through YouTube compression, even on PC hardware, there are things in this footage that will tell us what to expect and what to watch out for. Watch the melee combat carefully, specifically the takedown animations and the enemy reactions during fistfights. Something doesn't feel quite right. The animations appear to be running at a lower tick rate than the main gameplay. The character movement is smooth, but the animation transitions during combat have this slightly choppy quality, like they are updating at 30 FPS while the rest of the game runs at 60 FPS. This isn't a bug, it's a known optimization technique, running NPC animations at a lower frame rate than the gameplay frame rate to save CPU. You see it in a lot of open world games with high NPC counts. Crowd characters animating at 30 FPS while the camera runs at 60 FPS. It saves processing power, especially when you've got dozens of NPCs on screen at once. But there's a problem. If this is visible on PC running 60 plus frame with frame generation, what does it look like on PS5 Pro at native 60 or on base PS5 at 30 FPS? It's a kind of thing that's easy to miss in a fast-cut trailer, but harder to ignore over a 20-hour campaign. This is one of the first things I will be analyzing frame by frame at launch. Here's something I noticed watching the gameplay footage that I haven't seen anyone else talk about. The bullet hit effects. When you shoot an enemy in 007 First Light, there's no blood. Instead, there's a white puff, almost like dust or powder. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The reason is the rating. 007 First Light is rated T for teen, no blood. And to be fair, James Bond games have historically avoided heavy gore. This isn't new for the franchise. But in 2026, in a game that's positioning itself as a cinematic action experience where you are pulling headshots and throwing people off rooftops, white dust puffs on bullet impacts look jarring. It creates a disconnect between tone of action and visual feedback you're getting. Whether this bothers you personally is subjective, but from a technical presentation standpoint, it affects how the combat reads on screen. Worth watching at launch, whether there's a settings toggle for it, or if the rating locks it across all platforms. 3 specific scenes I will be watching closely on console. The Kensington Gala. Dense crowds, dozens of NPCs simultaneously. Interior lighting, chandeliers, reflective surfaces, character models at close range during dialogue. IO Interactive is the king of NPC density. Hitman's levels had hundreds of characters, but those levels had baked lighting. First Light's dynamic global illumination means every NPC is interacting with lighting system in real time. That's a fundamentally different load. The question is whether NPC count holds steady on PS5 or whether it gets quietly reduced. The Red Room. Around 25 enemies, interactive screens covering every wall, heavy particle effects, environmental destruction stacking on ray-traced reflections. IO's volumetric smoke system working overtime here. On base PS5, this is I would expect the biggest performance dips. On PS5 Pro, we will see how much PSSR and additional GPU headroom can compensate. And the driving sequences. Watching the available footage, the driving looks fairly basic. Linear, smashing through obstacles, more cinematic spectacle than mechanical depth. But beyond the gameplay design, this is a real performance concern. Driving means rapid environment streaming, geometry, textures, and lighting all loading at speed as camera moves. That's always one of the hardest things for console hardware to handle smoothly. Alright, let's talk about what the gameplay footage actually reveals about the design choices, beyond the surface impressions. There is a mid-game boss fight in the available footage that's worth analyzing. The structure is restrictive. You're locked in an enclosed space with one enemy. You can't sneak up on them, they're aware of your position. Your only option is to repeatedly stun them using environmental hazards triggered by your watch. Flash, blind, incapacitate, then attack briefly, then retreat to cover, and then repeat. It's a structure we have seen before. The David fight from The Last of Us is the most obvious comparison. That same cat and mouse in an enclosed space pattern, and boss fight are new territory for IO Interactive. Hitman's target were environmental puzzles, not combat encounters. First Light is attempting direct confrontation boss design, and the pattern visible in the footage is fairly formulaic. One boss fight doesn't define a game. The final retail version might have better encounters elsewhere, but it's worth flagging because it's the first proper combat showcase against a named opponent, and the design choice on display is conservative. Watch the cover transitions in the combat footage carefully. The system is functional, but not as fluid as something like Gears of War. Bond doesn't snap into cover with the same precision. There is a slight delay in the animation, and the angles you can shoot from look limited. There is a dash to cover mechanic, which sounds promising, but the cover to cover transitions look stiff. For a third-person action game in 2026 that's leaning on its combat as a key pillar, this is something to watch. Cover mechanics are foundational. You use them constantly. If they feel imprecise, it drags down every gunfight in the entire campaign. Here's the honest question. After watching everything that's available, every official trailer, every piece of early gameplay, is 007 First Light actually innovating, or is it polishing a formula we have already seen? The mechanical DNA on display is clearly Hitman plus Uncharted plus Arkham plus Watch Dogs. Sandbox infiltration with multiple routes, Hitman. Cinematic set pieces and traversal, Uncharted. Counter-based melee combat, Arkham. Environmental hacking and distractions, Watch Dogs. All proven system, all combined competently. But where's the new ground? My honest answer, it's not in the gameplay design, it's in the engine technology. The dynamic global illumination, the volumetric smoke system, the ray tracing, the Glacier engine upgrades. That's where 007 First Light is actually pushing forward. Whether that technical ambition translates into a game that feels next-gen to average player, that's an open question. But it might come down to how it looks and performs on your console, not on a press event with RTX 5080s. Two smaller things worth flagging. You will spot in-game advertising scattered through the levels. Not necessarily a deal breaker. Bond films have done product placement for years, but on a full-price game, it's worth knowing before launch. And HUD clutter. The Q-Lens scan highlights every interactable object with floating icons. It's useful for gameplay, but visually noisy. Worth checking at launch if there will be a minimalistic HUD option. After all that analysis, let me give credit where it's earned, because there's a real reason the early reception has been overwhelmingly positive. IO Interactive is one of the best studios working today for this type of game. No question. The Hitman trilogy is a masterclass in sandbox level design, player agency, and replayability. And everything in this footage confirms that DNA is alive in First Light. The Kensington Gala alone shows at least 3 completely different paths to the upper floor, each using different mechanics. One involves impersonating a photographer, another involves bluffing past guards using a stolen security roster name. A third uses environmental hacking and chemical distractions. That's not quote-unquote safe, that's intricate, layered level design. It's what IO does better than almost anyone. You can play missions entirely through stealth, no weapons, no kills, or go full John Wick mode. Guns, throwables, environmental takedowns. The depth of player choice is clearly there. And IO's console optimization track record is strong. Hitman 3 on PS5 logged 60 FPS. Clean presentation, polished launch. If any studio can deliver a technically ambitious game on console without disaster, it's IO. So I'm cautiously optimistic. The engine is impressive. The level design pedigree is proven. But cautious is the keyword. When 007 First Light launches May 27th, here's exactly what I will be doing. PS5 Pro versus base PS5. Across every mode the game ships with. Captured footage, frame time analysis, numbers overlaid on screen so you can see it for yourself. No guesswork, no marketing spin, just measurements. PSSR image quality. How clean is the reconstruction? Shimmer on Bond suit, ghosting on fast camera moments, breakup on the volumetric smoke. Ray tracing comparison. What does PS5 Pro's hybrid ray tracing actually looks like versus base PS5? Are reflections noticeably better on those Gala floors, or is it a pixel peeping difference? The stress tests, the Gala crowds, the red room combat, the driving, the volumetric smoke, these are where performance tells the real story. The animation frame rate. Is it present on console? Is it worse? Or is it the same? I will be comparing frame by frame. And the question everyone wants answered. Is the PS5 Pro upgrade actually worth it for this game? That video is coming as soon as the game launches. Subscribe so you don't miss it. That's everything we know about 007 First Light heading into launch. Let me know in the comments, will you pre-order this game or buy it at launch? Or are you waiting for the data? Personally, we don't recommend pre-ordering. That's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.